Hello and welcome to MZ Webinars. We're delighted to have you with us today. We're excited that we have Richard Hewitt, the Director of Higher Education, with us from MZ, and he'll be talking about, as you can see on the slide, titles and skills. If you have any questions during the course of the webinar, please put them in the control panel under the questions, and we'll endeavour to get back to those at the end of the presentation. If not, we can follow up afterwards. You will be getting a follow-up email after the presentation, so please keep your eyes open for that, and that will be the recording and the slides from today's webinar. So, any further ado, I'll hand over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Debbie, and hello everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in the webinar series for the higher education sector in the UK. And again, it is great to see a real mix of people who know us and people who are joining one of our webinars for the first time. So thank you very much for making the time. Today, I'm going to be looking at titles, so job titles and course titles, and the skills that describe them. Before I get into the meat of it, though, for those of you who are new to us, let me briefly introduce MZ and what we're about. And if you know this already, I will try not to take too long. Next slide, please, Debbie. So MZ is a labour market data and economic consulting company. We span out of the University of Idaho over 2 decades ago, and we now work with clients across the US, the UK, Canada and Australia. And what we aim to do is connect individuals, the education sector and employers, and help them make better decisions through having really good insight into their local economies and labour markets. To really shine a light on the labour market in all its aspects, we bring together structural economic data drawn from official government data sets, which are excellent for helping us understand the shape and makeup of local economies. But we also bring big data, so gleaned from tens of millions of online job postings and worker profiles. In the UK, we serve our data to HE and FE institutions, in England to local enterprise partnerships, across the UK to local authorities, central government. We work with staffing companies and large corporates. And we do all of that via online software platforms like our LMI Research Tool Analyst, through consultancy and research work. And we also supply data directly via APIs and other fancy technological means. Next slide, please, Debbie. So to update that, though, with some very exciting news, we have now merged with Burning Glass Technologies. So that's another labour market analytics and data and analytics and software company. We are now MZ Burning Glass. So this is great. This will just bring even more data and insight to what we do. And frankly, we really can't wait to bring our data and technologies together. So all of that work has started, and yeah, we just really can't wait to see what's going to happen. Debbie, just move on, thank you. And just to talk a little bit about how universities in particular use our data. They're all slightly different in their focus, but typically we see it being used in market insight teams who are looking to future-proof program portfolios against changing labour markets. We see our data being used to engage academics by employability teams, by module leaders to tailor their case study choices, by student recruiters and careers advisors to engage potential and existing students with labour market insights. And many universities in England use the data to engage effectively with their LEPs and around the country as well with other stakeholders, civic stakeholders. But today the theme is really focused on communications and around that messaging element, the messaging of course alignment to careers. So Debbie, if we move ahead. Great. So a lot of effort can go into choosing a course title for a degree program. You'll know this. Application data is pored over and competitors' successes and failures are tracked. Job titles, as advertised in job postings, perhaps have less effort put into their selection, though there are some odd ones out there, as we can see in the middle there. You know, perhaps the titles reflect legacy hierarchies, or the mood of the manager, or the positioning against competitors from whom a company is trying to recruit. But to what extent does a title define a course or a job? So over a 3 or 4 year degree program, there's a lot of opportunity for a whole range of topics to be covered. To capture them all in a title is only really possible at a very generic level. A job title, similarly, is unlikely to capture the full range of tasks and responsibilities taken on over the role's lifetime, unless it's a high level description. So if we, next slide, please. So how do employers bridge that gap when they want to recruit someone who can be successful in the open position that they have? It's not really feasible for the title alone to attract the right candidates for the role. The title needs definition, and this is communicated to the market in a job advertisement with a description of what the job will entail in terms of activities, the capabilities required to carry those out successfully, and so on. For those candidates who don't self-select out of the process at that point, then supporting documents are typically available, so which go even further to detail what is expected and required of a candidate, and of course that's the job description and person specification. This example on the screen is a current opening with MZ in the US, and do let me know if you want to apply. While account managers are, account manager, it's a common job title, this ad is quite clear in what's expected and what to expect in terms of the role and where you'd fit into that. Next slide, please. So how does that compare to the places where students go to find out about courses? So of course, I think what we have here are a couple of examples from listing sites. So the kind of compare and contrast and search for different degree programs around the country, where you can search or browse. And and of course you will have those large advertisements which are light on text and heavy on image and branding. And yeah, we know those are out there and catching people's attention and building a brand feel. But if you're getting into kind of understanding what the course is actually about, then you might go to one of these listing websites to compare and contrast and understand more. And here are a couple of examples which I've white labeled. But here what we can see is where the same degree title is being described. So 2 courses with the same title. And the activities and areas are summarized at a high level. Some assessment approaches are mentioned, and there are references to the course being good preparation for a career in vocationally related jobs. And if we just move to the next slide, we can then look to compare that to perhaps how universities do that on their own website. So universities' course pages can be pretty comprehensive, with course summaries, module details for every year of the course. On the other hand, they can also be very, very brief and lack a lot of detail. And there's an example that we have here. And what we've got is 2 examples of a similar level 5 module from the respective universities' accounting and finance undergraduate degree course pages. What I like about both of these is that they do speak to learning outcomes for the students, and they're not just summaries of the academic content. On the other hand, there's quite a difference in the level of detail, but that's not to say that longer is better. Being succinct in marketing communications is often beneficial. So typically a whole range of detailed supporting documentation from program specifications to schemes of work, and student handbooks can be, well, maybe not the schemes of work, but student handbooks, module handbooks can be downloaded somewhere. But to what extent do those support the marketing communications activities to prospective students? They might be there in a repository in the website, there may be a link, but to what extent are they an active part in that marketing communications effort? And you could argue that prospective candidates have to really dig to find that detailed documentation that really gives the same level of clarity as perhaps you might see in a job advertisement, to really define what sits below that title. Next slide, please. So there are two key issues here, I would say. How do students identify the courses that will best prepare them for the jobs they want to do? They can only get so far with course titles and the generic descriptions, which perhaps don't really differentiate so much between different universities offering the same type of course. And linked to that, but further down the life cycle, how do employers identify and target the graduates with the right skills? And that is related, and I'll come back to that second question at the end. The key, though, to answering these questions lies in communication and communicating what is of value. Next slide, please. So what is of value? At MZ, we look to both the supply and demand side of the labour market to help us determine this. On the supply side, we look to how people describe themselves to employers in their CVs and professional profiles. On the demand side, we examine how employers describe the capabilities and attributes they require for different roles. Bringing these together and analysing literally hundreds of millions of documents, MZ has generated a library of around 30,000 terms which capture these capabilities and attributes perceived by workers and employers to be of value. And for our purposes here, we call them skills. So it's a broad definition. I mean, skills can have different connotations in different contexts, but this is what it means for us. And the MZ Skills Library itself is an open source, dynamic, as in it changes because it updates, data-driven way to describe what is valuable in a labour market context. So MZ Skills kind of can be helping HE communicate what they deliver that is of value to the labour market, and therefore the outcomes for graduates. And it's not necessarily a question about changing what is taught, although that can be the case. It can really sit with the messaging of what a course can offer prospective students that they can then go on to offer to employers, and joining those dots. So if we move to the next slide, we can see what does that actually look like. And so what I've taken here are I've looked at a module, course and module overview of from a website of a university's MSc cybercrime in investigation course, and putting that through one of our parsing tools for identifying the skills terms in the MZ Skills language. This is what we can see. If we go to the next slide, we can take that a step further, and we can assess how well that group of skills actually connect to how employers describe roles using MZ's SkillSync tool. So what we're doing is querying this set of skills against the past year of job postings, and we can see which roles are closest to postings for this group of skills. And what we can actually see in the results here is that the skills and the job titles are really strongly associated in the relevant part of the job market. This means the course documentation here really contains great content in terms of its connection to the alignment between the course and the labour market. But to get to that level of information, we've had to really dig down into the program specification really to get to that. But we've been able to summarize it here with those keywords. If we look at another example, and Debbie, if we go to the next slide, here we've got another course. This is a master's in business, and apologies for the typo, business intelligence and analytics. And here we've got the skills. So again, we've passed a course summary here, and we've got all of these skills, and these skills are certainly directly relevant to outcomes and give a really defined sense of purpose to the program. What's interesting in the original text, and as I'm keeping this white labeled, I won't put that up, but in the original text, it does speak to you'll learn all these skills and how to apply them in the context of business, which is quite interesting. So if we then look to how these skills associate with the labour market. So if we look at the next slide, and again, we've used the SkillSync tool to correlate that group of skills with job titles. And we see that grouping of skills gives us jobs like data scientists and big data engineers. So while the job titles are, they're really relevant and clearly relevant to the skills that are being taught, what they don't directly do is link to the business intelligence type roles we might expect a master's in business intelligence and analytics to point to. And so this is where maybe we can approach the data from the other direction to inform what skills might potentially make that link. So if we look at the next slide, this is what I've done. So I've put basically gone in to use our job postings analytics tool, examining around 25,000 job postings from the past 2 years for a cluster of about 46 job titles associated with business intelligence and business intelligence analytics. So that's a typical approach that universities often use when trying to understand what's happening in certain areas of the labour market, so and that our researchers use as well. And here we can shine a light on then what employers are seeking, not only in terms of the hard and technical skills, but also in terms of the soft and common skills that we see for those roles as well. And just to say, common skills, as I said, include soft, but also those roles which are kind of hybrid roles that we see, hybrid skills, sorry, that we see across a range of different occupations. They're not all focused in one particular domain, and so we can see those broken out there. And if we follow that process through, if we go to the next slide, we can run those skills back through SkillSync, which looks right across the labour market, not just that cluster of 46 titles that we use to inform the job postings query. And what we can see is the most closely associated job titles with this combination of skills are business intelligence developers, business intelligence analysts, and power business intelligence developers. We can start to see that those relevant job titles are coming through in the analytics, and so we could see which of the skills really help make that connection between the data skills and the business context. And so we have titles that are closer matches to that intended vocational outcome of the program, and that's validating the group of skills that we identified in the job postings analytics. So now, of course, marketing teams probably won't want to be getting into conversations with academics about maybe what they should be putting into their courses. That's never going to end well at this level of granularity. But if academics are creating courses with employment outcomes in mind and work with employability colleagues on thinking about what is articulated, so it's not about, as I said at the beginning, it's not about necessarily changing the content of the course, but articulating better and capturing the employer relevant skills in the documentation, that can really assist marketing teams in communicating those far more explicitly to prospective students and closing that gap between what you can get from the course and how that links to your next step in terms of going out into the world of work. Next slide, please. So universities often focus on, I don't know, 9 to 12 or so core graduate attributes that they support students in developing, and this is absolutely excellent practice. And but what it doesn't do is necessarily differentiate provision for prospective students who need to make choices. It's great practice, but everyone's doing it. If we think about that kind of level of 9 to 12 key skills, but then put that alongside the fact the MZ skills language captures over 30,000 skills terms. About 350 or so are those kind of common skills, including soft skills, but even that, even the rest are primarily those hard technical skills. But even looking at the those common and soft skills, that's still magnitudes greater than what we see typically focused on, and having that level of granularity opens up the possibility for differentiation. Remember, we're capturing this data from, we create this language from what's of value to employers and workers, and it's of value because they talk about them. The MZ titles library that we use to standardize job titles, that itself has over 75,000 titles within it, about 10,000 of which are pretty commonly used. So if you think back to those course descriptions from listing sites and course web pages, how much is there to differentiate a course with the same or a similar title between universities? How well have the discrete skills the course develops and the specific outcomes they prepare students for been articulated? And when it comes to articulating that difference, is it all about place and the student experience? And you know, looking at the past year, let's be fair, that's changed somewhat anyway. And I suppose the point I'm making is that at the program specification level for a 3 or 4 year course, there's lots of opportunity to differentiate. That's already there in your documentation. But how do you bring that to the fore effectively? And that's really what been showing here. But how to actually go about doing that, it's all very well talk about the concept, but how do you do that in practice? And if we go to the next slide, we have a tool that you can use for free. So this is a skills extractor tool that's on our skills website. Got the, if you go, that's the main website, but if you follow the links for the skills extractor, it will take you to the right place. And basically what it allows you to do is copy and paste text, and then the skills data within that text will be tagged in MZ skills term. So it's not just looking directly for have you got exactly that term. It does clever things, critical analysis versus critical thinking. It will pick that up. If you type in R, the letter R, it won't notice it, but if you type in R and then maybe Python, it will notice it as a programming language. There is some intelligence going on in terms of how it understands things. It's also useful, you know, you can use it to help you index the skills that you develop in the course, but also if you click on one of the highlighted skills that are tagged, then you can also see on the right hand panel the skills we typically see associated with it. And you can see in this screenshot here, it reports on what has been typically associated with agile methodology, and that's quite useful for course teams and employability teams. But if you want to do this at scale, we have a skills API, and initial access to that is free as well, or it's limited free access. So I think you can run about 50 free queries a month on that. But if you have a data analytics colleague who's au fait with running API queries, then they'll have a lot of fun with this, and you know, you can run batches of data through that and do that extraction at scale. So that's one way that you can immediately go away and look at. If we look at the next slide, the pardon me, the job title association functionality that we looked at as well is something that is only available in one of our commercial tools that I mentioned, SkillSync. Now, it's got the benefit of having an export to CSV function. So if you do have your own kind of back-end system to track things at the course level, then that can help transfer what you're extracting out from your course documentation in terms of titles and skills, and putting that outside of your system and outside of our system and into your system. So, but it's got some other useful features too, so that give way to kind of further analytics, so being able to see how different skills are articulated by people according to their occupations or where they're based. So there's quite a lot there that can be used beyond just the use case we looked at today in terms of the communications. To go to the next slide, please, Debbie. So employers, just to kind of wrap this up really, employers define generic titles in terms of the skills, the tasks, the competencies, the attributes, and so on that are needed for a role. And the benefits of this are that it manages expectations and it attracts people suited to the job, and people can match themselves to it. Universities have the data already to do the same thing. Course descriptions can be better differentiated beneath the course title between institutions, and skills provide a route to doing this. The fact that they're based in the same language that employers use means that connections based in data can be made and give you even more to talk about with the students in terms of potential outcomes, but also, if you think about that full life cycle and the second question that I posed, if the students are then cognizant of the relevant skills that they've been learning and know to articulate those skills, and they're articulating them in the same language as employers are articulating them, then they are more identifiable by employers, and so that starts to close that loop in that whole student journey from choosing a course going right through to employment. And that language piece is important. If you think so many things now being automated, done at scale, using algorithms, and so these keyword matches, even putting all the pedagogical aspects of it to one side and just simplifying it just to the keyword side of things, that's important, because large employers and even small employers that use HR tech will be using those, or even connecting to those professional profiling websites. So those keywords are critical, and so making sure that there is connectivity between the way courses are described, the way students understand what they've learned, and how that connects to where they want to go in the job market, and joining those dots, making those connections, will make that process far smoother. So that brings me to the end of what I wanted to talk about titles and skills. I did talk about when we did that kind of reverse engineering to look at the job title analytics for the business intelligence, went about it through a job title clustering analysis, and we've actually used a similar approach for some research on the green economy. We talk about green jobs, the green economy, but what actually are they? Where does that sit? What can we learn from the labour market about those? And we're presenting that research next week, so please do join us. It's really fascinating research, and pretty relevant as well to the future of work, the future of jobs, and what universities might want to be tapping into as well. So do let people know, and you can find it on our website on our webinars page, so mzdata.co.uk, and follow the link to webinars. But Debbie, have any questions come through at all, or does anyone have any questions they would like to put into the chat box?
Just so I can understand, when you talk about listings, websites, what is included in these, as I'm not quite sure which sites you are referring to.
Yeah, so the kind of courses, the kind of websites where you compare and contrast different, you can search by universities, or you can search by job titles. I'm not going to give the names, but you know, the large scale websites where you can search for different degree courses and see what they're about.
Okay, that's great. That's the only question, so thank you for that.
Great. Well, if anyone, I don't know, Debbie, if you could, because you've gone to the PowerPoint view, if you can show the last slide, it's got my contact details.
Okay, sorry.
So yeah, and you can see what I was going to say there, but thank you very much. And if people do want to follow up or have questions, then I'm at richard.hewitt@mzdata.co.uk, and love to talk to you and find out how, you know, if you do try to use the skills extractor, do let me know how you get on. Be really interesting to see where that gets, and if you're interested in seeing what the job title associations might be, then let me know. We can just run a we can sit down together and put some things through SkillSync and see what comes out. Very happy to give that a whiz through with people if they're interested. But we'll end it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.